Imagine a world where, for decades, if you wanted to buy a large passenger airplane, you only had two options: Boeing from the United States or Airbus from Europe. These two giants had an almost unshakable monopoly, controlling about 98% of the global market. But then, in 2022, something unexpected happened. China rolled out its C919, the country's first independently developed mainline passenger jet. At first, many outside China dismissed it, thinking it couldn't possibly compete with the decades of experience behind Boeing and Airbus. And yet, in just a few years, the C919 shocked the industry by securing over 1,400 orders worldwide. That's a staggering number for a new aircraft that nobody believed in at the beginning. This isn't just about selling planes. The C919's rise is a signal that China is stepping onto the world stage in one of the most technologically demanding industries, commercial aviation. And that makes it more than just a machine. It's a challenge to the global status quo, one that makes the United States and Europe very nervous. So the big question is, can China really break through the barriers and compete head-to-head with Boeing and Airbus? Or will Western powers block it at every turn? When the C919 officially entered commercial service in 2023, the real test began. Building a plane is one thing, but proving that it's safe, reliable, and efficient in everyday use is another challenge entirely. And surprisingly, the C919 has performed far better than many expected. In just under 2 years of operation, this aircraft has already logged more than 23,000 hours of safe flight time. It has successfully completed nearly 10,000 commercial flights and carried over 1.27 million passengers. For a new aircraft, these numbers are impressive. Normally, airlines and regulators are cautious with brand new designs. They watch closely, waiting for any technical issues. But the C919 has shown a track record of stability and safety that rivals the more established players. Think about it this way. When a new smartphone comes out, it might take months or even years for people to trust it as much as an iPhone or Samsung. The C919 faced the same kind of skepticism in aviation, except the stakes are far higher because lives are on the line. Yet, it has managed to build confidence quickly. This strong performance is exactly why the C919 is now catching the attention of international airlines. And that's where the story gets even more interesting. Success at home is one thing, but the real prize for any aircraft manufacturer is international recognition. And that's exactly what the C919 is starting to get. Airlines across Brunei, Indonesia, and Brazil have already shown interest in purchasing the aircraft. In April 2025, even Malaysia Airlines publicly confirmed it was considering adding the C919, along with China's upcoming larger jets, the C929 and C939, to its fleet. This shows that the C919 is no longer just a Chinese experiment, but a product that global carriers are starting to take seriously. But perhaps the biggest surprise came from Europe. Ryanair, the continent's largest low-cost airline, made headlines when it announced it was open to buying the C919, as long as the price was 10 to 20% cheaper than Airbus. This was a turning point. Why? Because it marked the first time a major European carrier publicly acknowledged the C919 as a real alternative to Western planes. For airlines, the logic is simple. Aviation is a business of razor-thin profit margins. If a plane can do the job safely, carry passengers efficiently, and cost less to buy and operate, it immediately becomes attractive. The C919's growing appeal is a sign that China is edging closer to breaking into markets that were once unthinkable. But before that can happen, it faces one of its biggest hurdles, something every aircraft must pass before it can truly go global: the airworthiness certificate. Here's something most people don't realize. In aviation, building a great aircraft isn't enough. To actually sell it in foreign markets, the plane must pass a strict review called an airworthiness certification. Think of it like a golden ticket. Without it, even the most advanced jet can't legally fly passengers in another country. So why is this such a big deal for the C919? Because these certifications are usually controlled by Western regulators, mainly the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. And here's the catch. Granting certification to the C919 wouldn't just be a technical decision, it would be a political one. Remember, Boeing and Airbus currently dominate about 98% of the global large passenger aircraft market. If Europe or the US officially recognize the C919 as airworthy, it would immediately open the door for Chinese planes to compete on their turf. That could weaken the grip of Boeing and Airbus and shift billions of dollars in future orders toward China. Naturally, that makes Western governments cautious. Every certification means a full review of the aircraft's design, manufacturing process, safety systems, and testing records. It's an expensive, drawn-out process. And even if the C919 meets the technical standards, political considerations could slow things down. For China, cracking this barrier is essential. Without widespread international recognition, the C919 risks being boxed into smaller or friendlier markets. And that's exactly where U.S. pressure tactics start to come into play. The United States has a very clear pattern. Whenever a new competitor threatens its dominance in a high-tech industry, it doesn't just watch, it acts. And the C919 is no exception. In March 2025, the Trump administration rolled out sweeping new tariffs, hitting over 180 countries, but with the harshest penalties aimed at China. Tariffs on Chinese goods soared to an eye-popping 254%. China hit back with its own retaliatory tariffs of 125% on American products, which included aircraft and aviation parts. This was a heavy blow to Boeing because suddenly Chinese airlines, one of Boeing's biggest markets, were reconsidering future purchases. Industry estimates warned Boeing could lose access to as much as $28 billion worth of orders. But Washington didn't stop there. The real pressure point was the C919's engine. Right now, the plane flies using the LEAP-1C, a modern, fuel-efficient engine co-developed by General Electric from the US and Safran from France. On paper, it looks like a joint project. In reality, more than 30% of its key parts come from the United States. That's where the US decided to strike. By suspending export licenses for certain technologies and components, Washington threatened to choke off the C919's engine supply. And without engines, no matter how advanced the airframe is, the plane simply can't fly. This wasn't just about slowing China down, it was about sending a message. You can build your own jet, but without us, you can't mass produce it. The hope in Washington was that this would stall China's aviation ambitions for years. But here's the twist. Beijing had already seen this coming. And quietly, it was preparing a backup plan. When the C919 project first began back in 2011, Chinese engineers already knew they might one day face a choke point. The US could use its control over critical parts, especially engines, as leverage. So China decided to work on a backup plan from day one, developing its own advanced engine. That effort became the CJ1000A. For years, it was one of the most ambitious and secretive projects in China's aviation history. The goal wasn't just to copy the LEAP-1C, but to surpass it in fuel efficiency, cost, and reliability. Fast forward to 2023, and the CJ1000A completed its first high-altitude test flights on China's Y-20 transport aircraft. The results were impressive. Startup time in extreme environments was 12% faster than the LEAP-1C. Fuel efficiency improved by about 3%. Maintenance costs were nearly 25% lower. Even more importantly, China achieved 80% localization of the engine. This means most of the critical components, from high-temperature alloy blades to ceramic composite nozzles, are now produced domestically. One breakthrough came from a new alloy system that allowed turbine blades to withstand heat beyond 1,600 degrees Celsius while spinning at extreme speeds. Then came the real milestone. In May 2025, a C919 prototype equipped with the CJ1000A completed 500 hours of flight testing. The performance was stable, reliable, and ready for the next stage. This marked a turning point. Suddenly, the U.S. strategy of engine blackmail didn't look so effective anymore. China had proven that it wasn't just building an airframe, it was building the entire ecosystem needed to keep its aviation industry alive and independent. But the CJ1000A isn't the end of the story. It's only the beginning of China's bigger ambitions in the skies. For China, the CJ1000A was never the final destination. It was just the first step. The real goal is to compete across the full spectrum of commercial aviation, from single-aisle jets like the C919 to wide-body aircraft capable of long-haul international flights. Enter the CJ2000, China's next-generation high-bypass turbofan engine. This beast is designed with a maximum thrust of 35 tons, putting it in the same league as world-class engines like the Rolls-Royce Trent XWB and General Electric GenX. These are the power plants that drive today's largest and most advanced jets, such as the Airbus A350 and Boeing 787 Dreamliner. But China isn't just trying to catch up, it's aiming to leap forward. The CJ2000 is designed to be about 15% more fuel efficient than the CJ1000A. On a single trans-Pacific flight, that could mean burning 20 tons less fuel, which translates into millions of dollars saved each year for airlines. The innovations go even deeper. A 12-to-1 high bypass ratio that dramatically boosts efficiency. Advanced gear transmission technology for smoother power delivery. Breakthroughs in single crystal turbine blade manufacturing, cutting scrap rates while boosting temperature resistance by 200 degrees Celsius, allowing the engine to perform reliably, even in extreme conditions up to 1,700 degrees Celsius. And progress is happening fast. In March 2025, the core of the CJ2000 engine was successfully ignited in testing, with speeds reaching over 100% rated power. This milestone showed the engine is not only real but moving closer to commercial readiness. Together, the CJ1000A and CJ2000 represent a shift in the global aviation engine market. For decades, the LEAP, Trent, and GE90 series engines dominated skies. Now, for the first time, a serious challenger from outside the US and Europe is emerging. And that brings us to the bigger picture, what all this means for the future of aviation and the balance of power between East and West. The story of China's CJ1000A and CJ2000 isn't just about engines. It's about sovereignty, resilience, and ambition. For decades, the skies were ruled by a duopoly, General Electric and Rolls-Royce. Countries like China, despite building aircraft, always had to rely on Western engines, leaving them vulnerable to sanctions, supply restrictions, or sudden political pressure. Now that era is ending. The successful test flights of the CJ1000A on the C919 mark the beginning of China's independence in the aerospace industry. With the CJ2000 on the horizon, capable of powering long-haul, wide-body jets, China is positioning itself not just as a participant in global aviation, but as a serious competitor. This competition isn't only about technology, it's about geopolitics and economics. For airlines, more engine suppliers mean lower costs, more choices, and less monopoly power from existing giants. For China, it means freedom from Western leverage. And for the global aviation industry, it signals a more multipolar future in the skies. The battle for the skies is heating up. Will China's engines prove as reliable and efficient as the decades-tested Western giants? Can Comacs C919 and future wide-body jets win over global airlines, or will they remain mostly a domestic success story? One thing is certain, the days when only two names controlled the heartbeat of commercial aviation are numbered. With every successful ignition, every turbine blade perfected, and every test flight completed, China's dream of aviation independence comes closer to reality. The next decade will not only decide the future of COMAC's planes, it will determine whether the balance of power in the skies shifts from west to east. And as history shows us, in aviation, those who control the engines control the future.